15 Republican primary debate. We apologize that we've had some technical difficulties, so we're a little bit late in getting started, but everything seems to be good to go. My name is Jay Evenson. I'm the opinion editor of the Deseret News, and I will be the moderator here this evening. This is a race between Joanne Brinton and Kristen Norton. Before we begin, I'd like to read this statement. Nearly a decade ago, the Utah Education Debate Coalition recognized the challenge candidates for the State Board of Education face in communicating their visions to the voting public. And Kristen Norton, okay, there was some audio there that I wasn't expecting. To help address that problem, we have invited candidates to participate in now scores of debates. In every instance, we have invited all registered candidates to participate. In a few instances, and for various reasons, a candidate has chosen not to participate. To ease the conversations between candidates and the voting public, we have nevertheless always held that debate, and this year is no different. I would like to thank our partners, the United Way, the Hinckley Institute of Politics at the University of Utah, the Sutherland Institute, the Utah PTA, the Utah Association of Public Charter Schools, and the Deseret News. Tonight, we will have a series of questions with our candidate here, Joanne, we will begin first with a 1-minute opening statement, and then she will have 90 seconds to respond to each question. Now, those of you watching this on YouTube, at some point this evening, I will turn to you and ask if you have questions. I want you to be thinking about those questions now as we go along. Please put those in the YouTube chat, and someone will relay those to me. Joanne, we'll begin with the 1-minute opening statement. You can begin now.
Okay, well, I am Joanne Brinton, and I'm just excited to be here. I am a former history teacher who I haven't been in the classroom actually teaching for 15 years, but I love education. I love our country. I have 4 children that I've raised 15 years apart. So I've got 2 grown sons and then 2 that are 12 and 14 in the schools now. And have been helping in the schools, kind of on the other side. I was a single mom when I was teaching. So now I get to be the volunteer, get to help with PTA, sub a little bit for my children's teachers, and I am involved in the community, and I just want to be part of solutions for education and standing up for quality education in the classroom. So,
thank you. First question is just a general question. Please tell us what will be your guiding principles for decision-making as a member of the State Board of Education.
So I would say the state school board has become partisan as of the last 4 years, right? And I am a Republican. We're running a partisan race now. So the Republican platform is something that I fully align with, putting families first. And I believe that what's best for families is also best for teachers and students. So I think every decision made should be about what's best for the teacher and the students in the classroom, and following that kind of is the guiding star.
Thank you.
I don't know.
The state board's vision is, quote, upon completion, all Utah students are prepared to succeed and lead by having the knowledge and skills to learn, engage civically, and lead meaningful lives, end quote. Do you agree with this vision, or would you want to see another?
Oh, I think that's a great vision. I think our whole goal as educators in schools is to produce students who graduate knowing how to think and how to produce in society and be productive citizens. So anything we can do to encourage a lifelong love of learning, knowing how to learn, and a solid foundation of academics is going to prepare them for the real world. And that goes right along with that vision. It's a great vision.
Thank you. Many ideas have been presented for the future of the State Board of Education, and these have come up from time to time. Ideas from having its members be appointed by the governor instead of elected, to changing the number of board members, or some have even suggested eliminating the board entirely and relying on a superintendent only. How do you think the board should be structured, or should it remain as it is?
You know, that's a loaded question. So I am new to diving in and learning about this whole state school board. I was actually recruited to run for this office. So it's been a deep dive for 6 months. I think it should be the voice of the people. I think we get the best decisions when you've got people that are vetting you, asking questions, doing research and coming together. And I worry about positions being appointed, because then you're beholden to the person that appointed you. So I think it's a good thing to have it be a vote of the people. And I believe that it was the legislature worked to make the school board partisan 4 years ago, because for quite a while they have fallen in line with a more progressive education agenda. And so to come back to putting families first, maybe over unions and vendors, that we can work, I think it's important that it's a voted position. So if that makes sense, sorry. Anyway, sorry. I really believe that it's a scary thing to just have things appointed all the time if you're not happy with results. I think we need to look at results and be accountable to the people for our votes. And I will just say, oh, we've got 15 seconds, so I'll save my answer for the next one. Sorry.
Tensions naturally exist among the various levels of educational governance, and whether an issue should be handled in a top-down fashion or more of a bottom-up approach. Please tell us which issues, standards, or curricula should be addressed at the state board level versus at the local district, or with the school, or with the teacher, or even with the parents?
Well, that's a really loaded question that I think it's already lined up that way, so that standards and policies are set at the state level, and then the local school districts are supposed to be freer to choose their curriculum and handle the discipline and things on their level. So when there's bigger issues facing us, like maybe the sensitive materials, Title IX legislation coming down from the federal government, I think we bring in bigger issues that aren't fair to leave to the local school districts or to a teacher in a classroom. They need to feel like they're backed up by state policy and the legislature or an attorney general if need be. So I think it's important to give as much control locally as you can. I think Washington County does a great job leading out in many areas. Their career technical education, the way they've handled the sensitive materials, because it was left to the local school districts to do that, they really did step up, and they have led out to try to set an example for the rest of the state on how they can do that and not be afraid. So I applaud Washington County in what they have done. But I think we need to have separation of powers in all things. I taught U.S. history and government, and I love our Constitution. I feel like it's so divine in the way it's set up, and having the branches of government and checks and balances so that you leave as much to local control as possible. And there are checks on the government too.
Thank you. And along those same lines, state school board members are in a unique position because they are independently elected, and yet it's the state legislature that holds the purse strings and that often writes laws that affect what you do. Tell us how you would work to harmonize those tensions and to work with the legislature.
Well, one of the skills that I believe I have is that I question and I like to listen to both sides. Our legislature has swung more conservatively in recent years, and as I've been studying the state school board and their votes, what I see is they are a constitutional body that has the ability to act on issues, and they often do not in a strong way. And so when it comes to big issues like critical race theory, DEI, the diversity, equity, inclusion, the sensitive materials, they have not taken a strong enough stance, I believe, and so the legislature has stepped in and passed laws to force them to, and it worries me that it's a vote of no confidence in our school board. We need a school board that's willing to back up the 70% Republican majority that we have in our state when we have 2 Democrats, I think, and 13 Republicans on the state school board, I think the votes should fall more into line with our base population and take care of these issues. What I see is that the legislature is responding to parents crying out for help, where their pleas are being unmet at the local school board and the state school board level. So then they go to their legislature and legislators, excuse me, and then there's a lot of stepping on toes and working against each other. So I think I would work to build. I have some great relationships with legislators already, and we need to work together to do what's best for our students.
Thank you. And you mentioned some of those difficult issues, and here's one. Recently, the State Board of Education decided that questions about restrooms and gender should be left up to each individual school to decide on a case-by-case basis. Tell us how you feel about that decision.
I feel like that is like a David and Goliath situation where you are leaving local schools to be bullied by huge forces threatening lawsuits. And I think they need more backing up than that. I think that's too big of an issue to just leave to a local school. I do think there are issues that you've got to be sensitive to. We want all children to feel loved and accepted and safe in our schools. And there are certain things that can be handled on individual basis. But when you've got bigger groups coming in threatening to sue, that's a lot to leave to a school or to a principal or even a local school district. I think they need they need to know that their state has them, that the Attorney General's office has them when it's a big issue like girls' sports and spaces being protected.
Thank you. Let's move now to a question of funding. So if voters approve a measure this fall, the income tax earmark for public education will be removed entirely, which would complete what has been a gradual push over the last several years. What are your feelings about this change? Should we keep that earmark or get rid of it?
You know, I'm not completely sure how that should be handled. I think the legislature has been working to lower the income tax. I think there's a surplus, and so they're looking at that. And in other states, they do have access to those funds and how they're dispersed. Is it a better thing altogether? I know that there are some studies that show that states that don't have an income tax actually fare better economically. So would we be better off to not have the income tax? There's some big questions there that need to be studied and looked at from both sides. I do applaud that the legislature has lowered the rates through the recent sessions. I just think whatever will benefit our families the most and schools, I believe that the legislature is always going to make education a priority. They're not going to remove funding from education. This is a top priority. This is our next generation of leaders, and I know the legislature cares deeply about doing what's best. And we have an A+ rating in our state. I think the way that our legislature handles the budget is so responsible compared to other states that they should lead out on that. And there should be lots of conversations with the school board and finance people on that. So I'm not sure. It would take more research for me to make that decision and have it be an informed one.
All right, thank you. Let me approach it maybe from a little different angle and just ask, do you think schools are adequately funded in Utah?
You know, it's what has it gone to, an $8.9 billion budget or something? There's a lot of money going to the schools. I hear a lot of teachers and SPED programs feeling like they're not funded enough. But are there excess? That's something I haven't taken a deep dive into the books. Where is the money going, and is it best dispersed? Is there too much money going to new curriculum where we maybe don't need to, versus getting into the classrooms to the teachers? So administration rates of pay versus teacher rates of pay. I'm a history major, so that's something that I would need to study quite a lot more too. But I think we should always be looking at the results and where the money's going. And I know that there's a really great qualified staff to compare and look at the numbers and crunch and think, where can we streamline things better? But I think the education budget's huge. So is it going where it needs to go? I guess those are the questions that I haven't had a chance as I've been taking a deep dive the last few months, trying to learn all there is in the education world to translate it into this, for sure.
As long as I've lived in Utah, and that's quite a while, I've heard that we have a shortage of teachers, and we have a lot of young people who don't feel incentivized to go into teaching versus other majors in college. Do you feel we still have a shortage, and how would you address this if so?
Yeah, we want to encourage teachers. One thing that I see that could be done better, as a teacher who let my license lapse after teaching for 6 years and having a level 2 license, then after I'd raised my kids, my second set of kids, and got them back into school, when I looked at going back into teaching, the process that it was going to take to get requalified, to get my license back, seemed very arduous. I would love to see that simplified, so that it's easier to get back in with some classes and mentoring and use your time. And I know there is a process where you can keep track, but it's just where I don't have to teach, and I feel blessed that I can be home. That seems really like a hard process to get my license back. I would love to encourage more teachers to come back to teaching when they're able to, with an easier process. And I feel like the extra things that teachers are being required to do now, trainings that they're required to go through that aren't academic in nature, but more of the social aspects, are taking away some of the love of teaching. I think teachers should be free to just teach the subjects they love and not feel burdened and get more input. Would we be better off having teachers create their curriculum rather than buying or leasing big, expensive curriculum programs where teachers have more say and ownership over what they're teaching? I think there's lots of things to look at there, but I do hear from many teachers who feel burned out and tired with surveys and tests and just teaching to the tests, and the ways that they're having extra kids brought into their classroom, maybe that don't speak English, mid-year. There's so many things happening in the classroom on the ground that, maybe having more learning coaches in the classroom, more backup. And how do we encourage parents to come help our teachers more? Because that's what I tried to do in the elementary school, is just be there as a support for my children's teachers to help with reading assessments that they're supposed to do one-on-one with all their students. And if you've got 25 students in a class versus 35 in some classes, that's a huge difference to try to get with each child and do reading. And I'm going over time, I'm seeing, so
Time is up.
sorry.
Well,
Okay.
I'm willing to grant that because you didn't take the full time on some of the questions at the beginning, so that's fine.
Okay.
No problem. Kind of along those same lines, Utah's often criticized for having too large classrooms, and that could be a function of not having enough teachers or just the number of students that we have in the state. But do you think those large classrooms are a problem? And if so, what would be your solution to that?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I do know, as a former teacher, the more children you have in your class, the harder it is to teach and meet the needs of each individual student. So that it is a hard thing. So if you can have extra aides or encourage parents to come in at different times. I know the elementary school my children went to in Washington County, there was such a great support group of parents that were helping with reading classes and making copies and grading papers and doing centers. We would sign up for times to come help our teachers with centers. And I think it alleviated a lot of the burden. It's one of the top performing schools in the state, but the parental involvement is so key to that. And that's hard in a district where you've got poorer families and both parents are working. So I'm not sure how we help those schools and teachers best, because you see, when parents can't be there to help, it is a much bigger burden on the teachers.
So, testing has always been a kind of a controversial issue. And what do you think should be the goal with testing? And do you think the state is accomplishing those goals adequately?
Yeah, I worry about the testing, the way that it's set. I feel like what I'm seeing in Utah is more of a get them through, and we're looking at graduation rates. I know Utah, with their Portrait of a Graduate, they graduate 9 of 10 students. So that's a really great graduation rate, 90%. But the proficiency rates of being on grade level for reading, writing, and math are often less than half of proficiency, and that's concerning to me. And I hear personal accounts from teachers saying we are being encouraged to pass students through and just get them graduated, whether they know the material or not, whether they're prepared for the real world or not. And that's concerning. Our job is to prepare them to be productive citizens, not just to graduate them with a diploma that may not prepare them to go out and actually hold a job. And I had a math teacher who has, since she's left our school district and she's doing private teaching, she said, call the university and ask them about their Math 900 rates. Math 900 is remedial level math. So we're 5th to 8th grade math skills to be competent to then take college level starting math. And their rates over the last 10 years have gone up. I can't remember, I wrote it down somewhere, but I think 10 times the amount of students enrolling in Math 900. That's concerning. I hear people in the community who are, when they're hiring kids to work, often they don't know how to make change, just simple change. Like, what are the life skills? So I love that in Washington County, they're focusing on really growing the CTE programs. Am I done? Am I time?
Yes, you are. Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
No, you don't need to apologize. Go back to another culture war kind of a question. State law is requiring parents to be notified if their child wishes to use a different pronoun or to identify as a different gender at school. And some say this might jeopardize their safety at home. But what is your position on that?
Family is so key to the principles we hold as Republicans. The family is the fundamental unit of society. I don't think anything should be done in the school. I don't think any decisions should be made without parental involvement. If that child is not safe, okay, then we've got to call in other services and look at getting help. But the school should not be undermining the parent-child relationship. We should only be looking to support the family and build them up, because when families are strong, children are strong. So I would not be on board with anything that undermines the parents. Of course, we want children to be safe, but I hear a lot of, I got to listen to a gal who transitioned named Chloe Cole, met her in person, talk about at 15 years old, she was struggling, she was in crisis, and nobody offered her therapy. She was just told that she was just in the wrong body. So let's race to surgery. Let's take hormones. Let's cut your breasts off at 15 years old. And then at 18, she thought, what happened? I didn't really want this. Why did nobody offer me counseling and help and work with the parents? And so I just think we have to be so careful not to undermine parents.
Thank you. So about 11% of public education money comes from Washington. And because of this, Utah schools need to follow certain federal requirements, such as annual statewide tests, career and technical education, special education, etc. Do you feel the federal dollars are worth this trade-off at the state and local level?
More and more, I'm starting to wonder, with more of the social agendas being pushed into our schools. I don't think our schools should be experimental grounds for social change. I don't think they should be the grounds where we are encouraging social justice or activism. And that is what's coming tied to a lot of those federal dollars. I would love to see if there was a way for Utah to lead out. I heard Senator Johnson and Speaker Schultz on a podcast last week talking about things that they're trying to do with higher ed. And this is not an attack on public education, but it's a rescue mission in what they're trying to do for higher ed. And I think that should apply to our lower schools as well on the state school board. What can we do to make them better and stronger? And I didn't ever know what my teachers' political affiliations were growing up. I would love to just see our schools be a political free zone, focus on academics, excellence, merit-based accomplishments. How can we help provide the atmosphere for our children to best grow and thrive? And for everybody, be colorblind, be race blind, just treat everyone with humanity and the golden rule. I would just love to see us return to that in schools.
Thank you. So do you support Utah's the Utah Fits All Scholarship for School Choice? And do you feel there's enough accountability in place for this program?
I think the legislature has worked really hard to listen to the demands of parents who want to have choice. I think public education works for most children, and that's where they are. And of course, there is accountability, and there are things that these families are having to do to show their work, and I think it's a portfolio, but just the numbers that it's doubled and that they can't even keep up with the applicants shows that there's a need for it. And we need to listen to the people and to what the people want. So I think the legislature is trying to do that, and I support parental choice in that one size doesn't fit for everybody. Even one learning style doesn't fit for every child. I saw that in my classroom, and I appreciated that in my classes in teaching at BYU, where we were taught different, some students learn better with auditory skills, sometimes it's visual. So I think it's important to have choice, and this is America, and we're based on those principles of choice. And we need to continually look at the results and be watching it. But I see that our legislators are really working to do that with this scholarship. And of course, if there's people abusing it, we need to look at that as well and find that. So.
All right, thank you. So the state school board distributes billions of dollars annually to school districts and charter schools. Can you tell us what qualifies you to be a manager for such a budget?
Yeah, well, I would say you really, as a manager of something like that, you're relying on a content qualified staff, right? And if you have the correct principles in place of financial, where the money goes, looking at results, you're working with your staff, looking at the numbers, I feel confident in my leadership skills and ability to ask questions. And I'm excited to learn. I love learning. I love reading. I have an inquisitive mind. So I will rely on other experts in that to build a team to help me with that. But I think it takes a lot of flexibility. I know you've got to look at taxes and how much is coming in, and things change every year, but it's a huge job. But I do feel like I'm ready to learn and get the skills that I need to do that, and be an advocate for our local school districts, for the charter schools, for looking at where the money can best be spent and should go.
Thank you. I want to just kind of do a little warning here to our viewers online. I only have a couple of more questions, and then if you have some, please put those in the chat on YouTube, and now would be a good time to do that. Thank you. All right, so technology in the classroom has been controversial from time to time. What do you think is the proper role of technology in the classroom, and what should be some of its limits?
Yeah, I think it's a great accessory tool to use, but it shouldn't be the end-all tool. And I'm actually grateful that I did my teaching before everybody had a cell phone, because I think it can be, I just look in my own home what a distraction the cell phones can be, and especially social media and what those things can bring. So I applaud the governor and the efforts to, look at that and be studying that. Should cell phones be in the classroom? How often? I also worry about if they're not on a cell phone, are they on a Google Chrome instead, and how much? Is the tech becoming are teachers just going to be content moderators instead of actually teaching? I think we need more return to basics and using the technology where we can. I mean, it's a great resource. We can bring in tools, but being careful, because when you're a student, when you're a child, those pathways are forming in the brain of how to learn. And if they're completely reliant on technology, are they learning how to really research and look at both sides? Are they just going to believe what they're reading on a screen? We need teachers who are the experts in teaching their subjects to make sure that they're the ones really teaching.
Thank you. So do you feel Utah schools are doing enough to create a climate where every child feels safe? Or what would you change to make that happen?
I think that with all these social issues coming into the classroom, I think we're seeing that not every child is safe. I've looked at slides and pictures of diversity wheels that I worry that we're breaking kids into groups of diversity rather than unifying and teaching them just to be colorblind. I think the social issues should be removed from the classroom more. Let's focus on academics. Let's treat everybody the same. I would love to get back to Martin Luther King's dream of judging people based on the content of character and focusing, giving full histories as we teach, not revisionist history. I had a father come up to me and say his 10-year-old came home from school in Hurricane, so sad that she was white because we stole the land from the Indians. And I thought, was there some of that? Yeah, there are some hard things in our history, but is that the only side? And I also was just at George Washington's home and kind of had that one-sided revisionist history is what was portrayed through the tour there, that he was a slaveholder. The only great thing that the lady could say about, or young woman, I should say, would say about George Washington in that tour was that he stepped down after 2 terms. I thought, what a sad thing that she wasn't giving the fuller picture of George Washington and all that he did for our country. We should teach our full history, the good, the bad, the lessons to learn, and all of our academics should be highlighted, I think.
Thank
I'm
you.
seeing I'm done. Am I supposed to be looking at the chat? I'm sorry, I'm seeing like chat with 31 things on it, and I didn't know if I was supposed to be looking at that or just the time right now.
Yeah, the chat should, the time will be posted when you have 30 seconds.
Okay,
and then
just the time. Okay.
seconds. We do have one question from the audience. Can you identify specific key issues where you would have voted differently than your opponent, the incumbent?
Yeah, I can identify certain ones. So the critical race theory, that was the motion R277-328. So everything I just learned this this through the last 6 months. The big motions on the school board are titled by numbers, and they all start R277 dash, and then there's 3 other numbers. But this 328 is the one that dealt with the critical race theory, and it was the praxis of it and coming through in teacher trainings and ideologies. I would have voted differently. I would not have waited for the legislature. I think it went through 4 different votes, and there was a repeal vote. And I think now they have pretty much fixed it to remove those things from the classrooms and the teacher trainings. But why did it take 3 times or 4 times to vote on it? I think that's a college level theory that should be debated in the universities, looking at both sides of it, not something that's being presented and forced on teachers in trainings and presented in classrooms before students are before they're able to look at this. Nobody should be taught that white children are bad and that they are oppressors inherently because of the color of their skin. And that is really concerning. And I know that they changed the wording, and so they'll say there's no critical race theory. And I think Utah's we're working on it now, and I think they've gotten it about right. But why did it take so long? Also, the DEI and the sensitive materials. That took the legislature stepping in rather than just the school board handling it and doing, following the Republican principles. When you have 2 Democrats and 13 Republicans, I don't understand why there's still not conservative pushback on contested issues often.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. I don't see any more questions coming in from the audience. I think we can probably draw this to a close. I would like to thank you, Joanne, for being here, and I'd like to again thank our sponsors and our partners. I think these are great opportunities for voters to get to know candidates a little bit better and hopefully to be able to make responsible and good choices on election day. The primary election will be on June 25th. Thank you all for being here. And now, if you'd like to do a 1-minute closing statement, we'll do that now.
Sure. Yeah, I hear a lot of rhetoric about, canceling and right-wing extreme, and I just would say, I think we need to ask more, not be afraid of questions. We need to look at 2 sides and see where we can unify and just put our children first. And what's best for teachers is going to be best for students and families, and we should all work together to have Utah lead out. I see Utah leading out in education. There's no reason we shouldn't. We have such bright students, and we have wonderful teachers that need to feel backed up, and I would love to just be part of solutions. And so that's why I've thrown my hat in the ring to give people a choice.
Well, Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And thanks to all who have been here, and have a good night.
Thanks. Good night.
All right. We are in the clear. I thank you for your patience, everyone. The live stream is just a little